Hey everybody, this is Corey from Aquarium Co-op, and today I'm going to show you how to install drain lines in your fish room. It's a great thing to have automatic water changes, and some of the best work you got to lay down is the drain system. You don't put it in properly, it won't do very well. So let's take a look. So here I have a stand. It's the stand you've seen in lots of videos at this point. Runs about 10 feet long, and you can see this black ABS pipe is 2-inch, and I've found I can run a lot of water through a 2-inch pipe, free flowing. And I'm going to give you tips and tricks on what you're doing when you're hanging pipe. So first thing, I like to hang pipe with this plastic pipe tape. And you can buy, you might see in your house you've got metal stuff, and that'll hold up for a long time too, but I know it's going to be humid and get wet and stuff like that, so I already know I want plastic. I want plastic instead of metal, so that's just my personal preference. One, it's easier to work with, and I don't cut myself all the time, which the metal stuff is horrible and can cut you pretty bad. So make sure you're using plastic. You can use the metal, but I prefer plastic. So the next thing when you're hanging pipe, you need a slope to it. And so this side that we're on here is the high side, and the side all the way down there is the low side. And at least per my county's code, we need 2 inches of drop every 8 feet. And so this side, we're running at about 25 inches at the top of the pipe, and we're running at about 22 and a half, slide down here, 22 and a half down at this end. So what that's going to do is it's going to make sure that this pipe is always drained. So we can see the slope, water's going to come in, it'll go all the way down, and it won't sit in here and be stagnant. Also, if this side was, let's say, at 25 also, and we raise it up a little bit, the water is going to drain so slowly that we can get overflowing going on. And so then you really have to make sure that all the connections you're going to put to the pipe itself are watertight, otherwise you're going to leak. The other thing is, so you're thinking, okay, well, if we know we have to have a slope and it has to go downward towards our drain, why wouldn't we just raise one end up, like really high? Like, oh, I can just, make sure it's a non-issue. 2 inches, okay, sure, whatever. Why not just make it like a foot? And you can have it be, so we raise it up quite a bit. Now we've got a huge, angle to it. What'll happen then, the water that starts hitting this side, let's say we got a tap right here, and we've got an aquarium overflowing into this, it's going to start racing down there. You're going to get gurgling, and the water is going to be slamming down to that other side. And so what's going to happen is you're not going to get an even flow pattern. So the aquariums that are sitting down further in the line, that water is going to move slower. The higher end pipe, where there's aquariums, is going to move much faster. So you're going to get water slamming into each other. You're also going to get at points where all of a sudden the pipe, instead of being, let's say, this full of water all the way down, a nice even flow, you might have down here no water, and then through here it's completely full of water, and you've got water leaking out of the top now at your connections because it's full of water, because all the water is slammed down here. Then you run into other problems, which would be it's going to make this corner, and it's going to go towards my drain. Eventually it's going to hit my drain all the way in there. And if you have water traveling at, let's say, 15 miles an hour, it's going to hit that drain and be splattering out all over the place, because I run indirect waste lines so I can get into them, make sure they're not getting clogged up by plant debris or something like that. So in general, you want to have about 2 inches of drop per 8 feet of run. And so it gets a little complicated. So we've got 10 feet of run right here. Okay, so we have to drop about 2, 2¼ 2½ inches. And then I've got 6 feet of run to my other drain. So that's going to drop another, 1.5 inches. Let's say all of a sudden we're now dropping between the high point over there, and the connection where we're going to meet 4 inches is what we've come up with. So now we're already dropping 4 inches. Then we go at least another 6 feet into this room to the drain. So you're looking at 5 inches drop already. And you're going, well, that doesn't seem like that much, but my drain is already 14 inches or so off the ground. So we're at 19 inches, or, you know, it might be like 16 inches, something in that range of 1.5 feet or so. We're 1.5 feet off the ground. And so what that means is that's going to affect how many blocks or how high your lowest tanks can be. So we can see I've got 20-gallon aquariums, and we can see the pipe where it comes out of the wall there, and I have to connect to that, and I have to put that back together. I'm going to show you how to do that. But that, your low levels is now where you can put tanks the lowest. So when we're planning out a fish room, you got to think the whole room. So we already know that, you know, let's say back in my room there, let's just pick 15 inches, and we're at about 17 inches there, and let's say we're at, you know, 19 inches here, and we're going to be at, you know, 21 inches there, and we already know we're actually at 25. But you can imagine, so if we have to add more run to it, which we will, because this fish room is getting built out, and so this is only at 6 feet to this wall. So if we tack on like another 6 feet where these aquariums are being painted, and there's going to be another row of aquariums here, it has to go up by another inch. And another 6 feet, it's going to have to go up by at least another inch. But it's actually, you know, it ends up compounding on itself really fast. And so the problem you might run into, or at least I always run into when I'm building a fish store or a fish room, so by the time you start getting to your last wall, the bottom of the drain pipe, to make sure it's going to drain correctly all the way to this corner and all the way back to that corner, the farthest point in the room, we might have a drain starting at 30 inches. And if I go measure my aquariums over there, the aquariums on that wall aren't even 30 inches high. And so you want to keep the lowest point you can. It's also the reason why you only want to go up by 2 inches roughly at every 8 feet. Because if you just start going willy-nilly and choosing, you know, oh, it'll be fine, as you extrapolate that out row after row after row, it's not going to be fine. So a lot of times it's actually better to run all of your drain before you start setting up aquariums, because you can come back and adjust it. Now, I've done a few rooms, I've built a fish store, I've run into this problem, so I'm very aware of how much it sucks to have to go back, and so I'm being very diligent not to waste any of my slope in any of these. So, that being said, we've talked about, we like this pipe tape, we've talked about slopes, we've talked about tying in here, and we have a drain, which you might have a drain that's outside, you could have a bucket with a sump pump, you know, that's a whole different video on how to get water out of your room. This is all about how to get water at least to a point we designate. And so yes, we have dry fitted this next bank. We've got the elbow dry fitted. I've made the cut over here, and you can see down here there is the Y, or the T that I'm going to put in. It's actually a T, not a Y. A Y would be three-way. We're going to put that T. It has to slope back up to here, and we're going to tie in. And once I dry fit all that, then I can come back in and use ABS glue and glue these 3 joints. So there's going to be one there, actually 4 joints. There's going to be one there, connecting those 2 pipes. There's going to be the one with the T coming out this way. I need to glue there. I'm going to need to glue right here and right here. And all of those have to be at the correct angles. So I don't recommend, like, this is a free-floating angle in my opinion. So if I cut something a little bit too long, it could sit out a little bit, it could go over a little bit, stuff like that. Those ones are hard fastened in. So my advice is to do the one that's the most flexible last. So that way by the time you get to it, you go, oh dang, I kind of had it a little bit off center here, so I'm going to move it up a little bit and that way a little bit. and it still works. You don't have to go back and cut ABS. And so I typically cut ABS with a chop saw, and I just do that outside. They're quick cuts, and measure twice, cut once, definitely. And so now I'm gonna, dry fit and glue. So here we are doing the last connection. We're gonna want to put ABS cement on the inside of this and on the outside of this pipe, and we're gonna fix them together, and that will solve this. And then I'll show you how I'm gonna tie it into, or how I'm gonna redo my sink area here. So. Alright, so I finished gluing up everything. We've got everything tied in here. And now I need to tie, well, I was already tied into my sink that I put in here. But more importantly, I want to fix the way my sink is tied in. I've got some tubes here that are not permanent, but so the problem is, the way, let me see if I can get in here for you. The way this sink is set up, I like indirect waste lines because I can see when stuff clogs up. That's nice. But, just like I was describing in the video earlier, this flexible outlet for the sink here can run out. So when water gets going too fast, it hops up out of here. So how do I fix that? From hopping up and out, we need to make this slope of this tube less. And the way I'm going to do that, because we can really see that this indirect line, waste line here I've put in, is decently high off the ground, we're going to elevate the legs of this utility sink. And so I'm going to put it on some cinder blocks and raise it up about 6 inches. And I'm hoping that 6 inches will allow me to adjust this tube so it sits down in there nicer. And then, once we've raised this up by 6 inches, we will then tie in the drain line that's sitting on the ground at the moment back into the indirect waste line. And yeah, so I'm going to move some bricks and we'll see how it looks. Alright, so we've now put it up on a cinder block. This is the same cinder blocks we're building the stands out of, so they're only 6 inches tall, which I think is going to work. And as if you could believe it, a 6-inch block also raises the standpipe of the utility sink by 6 inches. So now I'm going to try and snake that flexible fitting down to fit in there well, and we'll see how it looks. So it's a good thing I didn't have 8-inch blocks, because I'd have to add an extension to this. I've got it all the way extended at this point. And now let's turn on the water full blast and see if I got some right. So it looks like we're getting perfect flow. Nothing came out. We saw it whirl around the drain and go down. And that's perfect. That's exactly what I want to see there. Because before it was whirling up and out of the drain. So, I basically fixed that problem for about $4. The bricks were $1.06 each, I think. Raised it up. Now I just got to plumb in this last line here, which we're going to do that next, and we'll show you how that turns out. So here we are. We have tied in the drain line back to here. And this is going to change again, actually, because I'm going to put a Y in and run the drain line also this way through this wall to run to other tanks. But for right now, this is fully functional, and that's what we're looking to do. And I can now run the water on full time in the sink here, which is nice. And I'll be able to drain water, which I've always have been able to since I put this in. But now I've got it reconnected, and now we have more tanks, or at least in theory another rack of tanks. So we're gonna have 8 tanks here. We're gonna build out this side. We're gonna put 8 more tanks, so another 16 tanks will join the 8 that are already set up, and they'll all be draining. All right, now we're at the point where we need to affix tubing to the barb, and this is all part of the draining system here. And the easiest way is to use kind of an oversized barb and undersized tubing. So these right now, it pretty much won't go on there. I mean, you could really muscle it, it's really hard, but the easiest way is to just use, let's put this back away. Use a cup of like boiling water and get it really hot. And just put like the first ½ inch or inch in there, and it's going to become super pliable after that. So it takes about that long. So now it's super pliable. You still have to do some work to get it started, but you barely have it on there now, and then you kind of rock it back and forth. And you want to get at least 2 of the barbs up. What's going to happen is when this tubing cools down again, it's going to shrink on there and be really tight. Not that this is a high pressure system anyway, it's just a drain, but it's just, you really don't want it to come off. And if you only get to that first barb, it could work itself loose if you're ever doing anything with the system. So recommend, while it's still hot, it's already started to get cold here, work it onto that second barb at least. And you could work it more, but what's going to happen, and I've done this, that's how I know, is if you really keep working this and you can get it to the 3rd or 4th, by the time you've done like 8 like we're going to do here, you'll have a huge blister on your thumb from working it so much. So yeah, the next part, we actually just want to glue this in. I'm going to take some glue and we're going to put it in the bulkhead. You want to make sure you get it all the way around. And then I found I like to put this in at an angle versus straight up and down, because when you're straight up and down, you have to drill this hole perfect. If you're putting it at an angle, you've got kind of a slope to it, and you've got way more give to put this down somewhere. So I'm going to put it in straight, but then I'm going to turn it up so it gets a good gluing. And I'm going to do something like that right there. So we're going to let the glue set. Glue's almost set there. Meanwhile, I'm going to get the drill ready. Alright, so we're using 5/8 tubing here. And I prefer to use tubing so that if I ever need to take this aquarium out, I can just pull it up and out and move it. And I can move this tank a little bit. If we hard plumb this, one, we're going to need adapters here at the line, which is a real pain to put in. Two, we need to be very precise in where we put this. There'll be no flexibility. 3, you either have to use a union at each one, which would be very expensive, or you'll have to cut it if this tank ever needs to come out. Not that we'll ever take these tanks out much, but we do want that ability. So we're going to use flexible tubing, and we're going to put it, we'll put this one like right here. Why not? So we're going to drill. Alright, so we made a hole with a 7/8 hole saw. We're going to clean up this from the burrs a little bit. And now, we need to trim this down. Now normally I'd be much closer than having all this excess, but this was a piece that was left over from a different project, and so I'd rather use scraps than cutting from a large roll. And so let's say we want it something like this. We want it to go down in the pipe far enough because then we're going to come back out. So let's go ahead and, midway or more. So we'll go ahead and make that cut. Alright. The other thing I like to do is, if we ever cut this too long, we put it in there and it makes a seal against the bottom. It's not going to drain very well. So I like to come back and cut this either at an angle or cut a notch into it. Doesn't have to be a big notch, but just enough so that it's not going to make a flat seal. And so yeah, just a little notch in there. That way if we bottom out, won't be a problem. We cut this little piece off here. And then we're just going to put it in the hole, just like that. And now we have one drain installed. This tank is virtually overflow proof. We can't overflow this thing. We must put way too much water to it, but the 5/8 is going to handle a decent amount. We've got 1 inch at the elbow here to 3/4, and this is what I found to be the minimum to be able to handle duckweed and things like that from building up. If you go 1/2 inch at the bulkhead and stuff like that, it will clog up with some things from time to time. So yeah, this is nice and in there now, and so you can see here that this fixture is moving. The thing to know is it's actually the bulkhead moving, not so it's glued in there well. So it's not the PVC. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these, and we'll talk about it when I'm done. So we've now finished the plumbing, or at least the drain for the drain system, and that's going to pretty much sum up this video. But you can see here we've got the low end drains closest to the pipe come in at an angle, makes it a lot easier to plumb. The ones that are high we have come down at a 90 degree, and then they can go, you've got some fluctuation, you've got such a run going, you can choose where they go. And you can see here we've got lots of space left to tie in. So when I put this other wall of tanks in, we've got all this space, we've got some here and here if we needed to. And so yeah, 2 tanks, 2 tanks, 2 tanks. So at the moment you see plumbing for 8 tanks. This is going to hold 16 tanks. If we were to go 3 rows high, it'd be 24 tanks, and we could make that fit as well. And it's real easy. All we're doing is drilling, putting it in. We've got our bulkheads in. It's that easy. And that concludes putting in a drain system in your fish room, or at least how I'm doing it. And yeah, we'll see you in the next video.